All right, welcome back everyone. Really excited to see you all staying all the way till the end. Yeah, if it's not obvious, I'm somehow more nervous than my opening, and I don't know why. But I would like to now introduce the last keynote speaker to this stage, and Sumana Hariharaswara. I know I forgot, I made another mistake. And this is important. Sumana Hariharaswara. So I know Sumana from way back a long time ago, like early in my journey in Python. And I somewhat heard of her name before, but on one of the first day of PyCon US sprints, and I think a lot of you might have similar feeling that your first time at the conference, you don't know a lot of people, you don't know what is the sprint. You walk to the room and maybe some of you felt lost. I walked to the sprint room and there was Sumana. She just greeted me, say, "Hi, would you like to join our sprint?" Zulip sprint, if I remember that. And that just made me realize, that just left a long-lasting impression to me, but that's one of the few moments that made me realize, so this is what the Python community is like. So it is truly an honor for me to be able to invite Sumana Hariharaswara here to keynote stage. So please welcome her.
Hi, everybody. I used to be the project manager for some things that you use a lot, like pip. When you type pip install, I worked on that, right? Which means I'm here to tell you untold stories from 6 years working on Python packaging, which are untold stories from many years caring through infrastructure. Because I took care of you. Because infrastructure is a way we take care of each other at scale. So for much of the time, from about 2017 to 2022, I got paid to work on packaging as a project manager, and you may have a couple of questions. Like, what even is packaging? What do we mean when we talk about Python packaging? Well, when we say packaging, we mean the tools that we use for creating and downloading and installing reusable bits of Python code. Most of the time when people write software, we don't write everything from scratch, right? We basically borrow and duplicate stuff that other people have done. And this is part of the magic of free and open source software. It's part of how the internet and most of the technology that you use has been built. And it's been so useful to have a single website, the Python Package Index, which we call PyPI, is a one-stop shop for all that open source Python code that you might like to make and share or reuse. So that's packaging. Developers make cool software and put it in a tidy package and upload it to PyPI. And when you type pip install, pip grabs that piece of cool software from PyPI and installs it on your computer. That is about as far as I'm going to get into the fundamental underpinnings. If you want to know more about the internals of how these packaging and distribution tools work on a code level, or the history going all the way back to the 90s, I'm going to recommend to you several other PyCon talk videos, such as Dustin Ingram's Inside the Cheese Shop from 2018. Oh, this is a good time to share 2 meta notes about this talk. One, you don't have to scramble to take notes because I have already posted a blog post with lots of links. You don't need to, so you can look at the hashtag #PyConStories. I also put it on PyCon US. And here's where to find me online. Second, look, this, like all the talks at PyCon US, is gonna be a family-friendly talk, okay? I'm not gonna use swear words, and if I slip up and say a bad word, I am going to put a penny in this swear jar right here. I've explained packaging, but what even is project management is possibly a larger question for many of the, especially the coders in here. I was project manager for PyPI and later for pip. One friend, as I was rehearsing this talk, said, okay, so most people find Python packaging really boring, and they think project management is also boring. So you're trying to give a keynote about the boring part of a boring thing. But nothing is boring if you pay the right kind of attention. And being a project manager means being curious and being stubborn. It means researching what all is happening in a project and getting a sense of the goals, what work is happening towards those goals and what work isn't happening, and figuring out the right question to ask and not going away until someone has a good answer. And it means building trust with a team, that we're all actually going to take each other's opinions seriously. And together we're going to make reasonable estimates and roadmaps, and I'll do paperwork and bug triage so you don't have to. I'll communicate on your behalf to funders and users so you can concentrate on what you're doing. It's been really interesting, I think, and I want to share 5 stories with you about things that happened behind the scenes over the course of those years as you were using tools that got better. First, just the fact that new kinds of help became possible. This is Python. This is not a blank slide. This is meaningful white space. At PyCon US 2016, I ran into an old college friend, Nathaniel Smith, who was working on Python packaging. And I had just started a consultancy doing short-term project management for open source projects. And so I thought, oh, maybe I could find some clients at PyCon. And Nathaniel was like, yeah, maybe you could work with me on NumPy. Didn't bring up packaging, right? NumPy forms the basis for numerical computing. It's one of the foundational tools of scientific Python. We were talking about what maybe I could do, working out a proposal, and along the way, Nathaniel said, oh, you know who could use a project manager is PyPI, because in 2016, PyPI looked like this. Maintainer Donald Stuft has said this was a weekend hack for a proof of concept that was intended to get quickly replaced by the real code, but over a decade later, yeah, that became critical infrastructure for most Python developers. This code predated modern frameworks by years and either predated or was a contemporary of WSGI. And that legacy site was just terrible for developer sustainability and operation sustainability. I said I wasn't going to swear. All right. I'll clean up my act, sorry. It had tons of technical debt. It had very little automated testing or other tools that would make infrastructure work more doable. So it was unreliable. We couldn't get new people to start contributing to it, and we couldn't add new features we needed. Critical security stuff like 2-factor authentication, completely off the table with this particular code base. And you've probably been hearing about a lot of the work that we've been doing, that we had to build on a new foundation about, right? Donald and others had put in effort for years to write a replacement code base called Warehouse. And there had been a little bit of support from some companies, but most of this was by volunteers. They'd made some progress, but we needed to get some concrete, concentrated time to get all the way there so we could redirect all the traffic to the new site and take down the old one. We would need back-end development, DevOps, load testing, front-end development, user experience, research design, tech writing, stakeholder outreach, release management, and project management, and it really needed doing. But not for me in particular. In open source, there's often this advice that if you want to find a project, you should scratch your own itch. I had no itch here that needed scratching. I was not using these tools. This is the packaging mascot, which is a platypus that's extremely enthusiastic about packaging, and this was not me. I was like maybe the ball of string or something. I was not particularly passionate about making Python packages more uploadable, downloadable, and installable, I did want to work on something that mattered. That's what I cared about. That was enough. So I started poking at it. I did project management. As a volunteer, I cleared out the obsolete parts of the bug tracker. We made a roadmap for decommissioning the legacy site and launching the new one. We figured out a budget. We submitted a grant proposal, and Mozilla Open Source Support, which is on hiatus or possibly defunct, said yes. We used that money. We overhauled PyPI. We came in on time and on budget, April 2018, so now PyPI looks like this. And a key reason why all of that happened is that someone I kind of knew saw that PyPI was stuck and conceptualized it as, oh, maybe they need a project manager. When I talked about the idea that new kinds of help are possible, this is what I'm talking about. Knowing that a kind of skill can solve a problem that sometimes people run into makes it possible to realize that a situation isn't just the way it is, it's a problem that could be solved, or at least addressed or mitigated. And this goes for project management. This goes for coaching. This goes for researching and writing grant proposals. This goes for user experience research. If you realize that certain skills exist in the world and are useful, then you can think about matching them to situations that could be addressed. You can think about learning those skills, recruiting them, hiring them, finding volunteers, and whether a colleague of yours maybe could use that kind of help. And this is also a story about what gets called the strength of weak ties. You know, Nathaniel and I had not really been in touch that much, right? And that's what made this possible. The people in my circles already knew what I was looking for. The people in his circles already knew, but the cross-pollination was possible because of the kind of conversation that emerges at places like PyCon US. And that's why your first piece of homework from today's keynote, if you have a lingering email in your inbox from an old friend or colleague that you've been meaning to reply to, but it feels like it's been years, and go ahead, hit reply, say hi, blame me. Say there was this jerk of a keynote speaker who said that you should really do this, but say hi. Oh, we kept on going, right? After we had overhauled the code base, so now it was warehouse running, you know, we could actually make more improvements now, right? Because we didn't have all that technical debt. I found more grant opportunities. We applied, we got funding to make more improvements. The Open Tech Fund said yes. We could do localization. PyPI is available in Portuguese. We could finally add two-factor authentication and a bunch of other security improvements. Facebook gave us money to do more security work. And then in 2019, now that I knew more about the packaging ecosystem, I started thinking about this bug from 2013 in pip. The heart of pip is, oh, you want package X? That means you're going to need Y first. And our old resolver was really unpredictable. We needed to finish an overhaul of it because a lot of other Python projects were blocked on it, and other features and bug fixes were blocked on it. So I was the lead author on 2 grant proposals, one to Mozilla and one to the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. They both said yes, and so in 2020, I again got paid to do some work on packaging. I was the project manager on a multi-person project to overhaul the resolver at the heart of pip. We made that happen even though it was 2020. Oh boy. And so if you go to pypi.org under sponsor, you'll see this list, which you don't have to read this right now, right? It just shows the fact that there's so much here that it's hard to show on one slide demonstrates when the Python Software Foundation gets funding, it gets results. Fun fact, I never ended up working on NumPy. And I think there's kind of a lesson there. What seems like failure can actually prepare the ground for success. One reason why we were successful in even that first Mozilla open source support application, I knew something about the process because I had failed previously in applying for a MOS grant for a different project. I've been really inspired recently by Rebecca Solnit's book, Hope in the Dark, which is about activists who think, I have just failed. This thing that we're trying to do, we didn't do it. But actually, in the course of trying, they built foundational organizations, networks, knowledge, skills that turned out to be absolutely crucial in a future success that they just couldn't foresee in the moment. Hope means you just don't know what's coming next. Second story I want to tell you is how I engaged with learning and teaching with Python packaging, because engaging with a big old infrastructure project involves learning its history and then spreading the news. Again, there's so much confusion. I'm not going to try to get into the details of the internals. If you think dealing with packaging as a user is confusing, you ought to try learning how to maintain it. And if you ever start working on anything as complicated as Python packaging on the maintainer level, you will never again use the phrase, "Why don't you just?" Python packaging, that entire set of tools, mostly emerged through volunteers putting together spare hours here and there. It was not a top-down designed process well-funded by the industry that depends on it. And as a result, it was iterative. It's been organic. There is a lot that makes sense, but it doesn't, that whole process doesn't lead to really consistent and easy to understand from the outside architecture and interfaces. And if you start engaging with an old, iteratively created project of that type, and you get confused because the anatomy of it feels undesigned, it's hard to understand, you are the most normal person alive. Sometimes you have trouble understanding the system because there's something in it that doesn't make sense. I used my learner's mind. I asked questions and I wrote down the answers. And now we have better documentation. And it's going to be better for sustainability if the... such a dirty mouth. One way to think about an open source project is that it's like a lab notebook when you have documentation that you share together. The Git commits, the comments, the manual, all of it, right? Everybody who's contributing needs to learn to read that shared lab notebook, and everyone needs to learn to write in it in a way that can be reused by others. I found that asking, hey, why is this the way it is, led to interesting architectural overviews that I could then put into documentation like this example from Pip's documentation now. I highly recommend the book, Making Software, What Really Works and Why We Believe It, edited by Greg Wilson and Andy Oram. There's a link in the blog post, which is a compendium of research in software engineering. And one of the findings mentioned in it is the number one thing that new contributors coming onto a team want that they can't find in existing documentation is that design rationale. Why is this bit designed the way it is? Was it intentional? Was it to meet a deadline? Was it an accident? You can learn these things when you come into an existing project. You become an archaeologist, right? You contribute, you learn about the past. That's what I did. And then to help our users, I needed to help them learn about the present and the future, which is especially hard to do when you're trying to do outreach about infrastructure, which by definition is stuff that a lot of people depend on who don't know they depend on it. So as I was working on especially PyPI and pip, I tried out a few different ways to spread that news. And one of them was this video, which I've just very lightly edited.
There's a big change coming to pip in October. It'll be a great foundation for making it easier to deal with installing packages with Python.
Computers need to know the right order to install this stuff. To install X, you need to install Y first.
So, when Python programmers share software, like when they publish packages in PyPI, they have to precisely describe those installation prerequisites.
And then pip needs to navigate tricky situations when it gets conflicting instructions.
Up until now, pip's been very inconsistent in handling this stuff, which makes it easy for a Python environment to get messed up.
So we've been adding a proper dependency resolver to pip, so it's better at handling that tricky logic and easier for you to use and troubleshoot.
We're testing it in beta right now, and in pip 20.3, coming in October, the new behavior will be the default.
Once you're using the new resolver, pip is going to be more strict and more consistent. So things won't mysteriously break as much, and we can add more features that lots of people want.
But some people and some packages are going to run into problems in October because the transition to a stricter approach will break some workarounds that depend on inconsistencies.
We really want this change to go as smoothly as possible for you and for our bug tracker.
So now's a good time for you to visit our migration guide at the link below and try the beta of the new resolver. There's a link there for you to report feedback, good and bad.
The other link is to sign up for our user experience studies. If you sign up, then we can get your opinions in the future with surveys and interviews to help make Python packaging better.
No matter whether you use Python every day or not, whether you're an open source software maintainer or an open source software user, please sign up because your opinion matters.
I'm Nicole, and I work on user experience for pip and Python packaging.
I'm Pratyuk, and I'm a pip maintainer.
I'm Bernard, and I work on the user experience of pip.
I'm Sumana, and I'm the project manager for pip.
I'm Paul, and I'm a pip maintainer.
I'm Ziping, and I'm a contributor to pip.
I'm Georgia, and I work on pip's user experience.
I'm E, and I work on the Python packaging infrastructure.
We're some of the people who will read your bug reports and your compliments. We look forward to hearing from you.
Glad you liked it. I want to point out two things about this video we made. One, what it's trying to do, that's pretty clear, pretty obvious on the surface. Boil down what people need to know and pass it along. Here's some stuff that's going to happen to something you depend on. Heads up, here's how to give us some feedback about it. And it was something that we were trying to get out to people who weren't going to go read the official Python blog, right? People who don't even think of themselves as pip users the way I drink water, but I don't think of myself as a water user. I'm not going to the water Discord, catching up on the latest water release notes. Infrastructure is often invisible either just because of our perception, and sometimes in the case of digital infrastructure, often almost literally. And Mel Chua and Stephen Jacobs did some research specifically about PyPI and sustainability. Talking about a particular interesting tension. Expectations of whether communication from upstream to downstream should happen. The expectation that users should be able to maintain an uninterrupted focus on their own work, which is encapsulation, versus the expectation that users should have an ongoing awareness of happenings upstream, which is non-encapsulation, right? We live in that paradox, and it's especially magnified given that there is no one place that I could communicate out to everyone who needed to hear about this change. In the US, if I were the water company, a utility like that, I'd at least have some billing addresses, but I don't have that. There is no one Python community. There's an archipelago without a map. So trying to get this video out was a way to try and get users who live in some different spots, right, in that archipelago. And then there's the subtext of this video, which is don't yell at us. If you get mad, it is absolutely reasonable for users to get frustrated when institutions foist changes on us without any kind of recourse, when we are just at the whim of people who hide and there's no accountability. I didn't want us to do that. So this video tries to say, we really want your feedback. And when you give it to us, please treat us like people, because we are. We're people just like you, and we're all in this together. So it was a broad spectrum approach, right? Okay, put it on the official Python blog and our low traffic announcement mailing list, write stuff in our documentation, post to the main Python mailing list, and answer questions there. And I searched GitHub for projects that had experienced a particular kind of problem with our project and then told them, hey, please check out this beta. I wrote an article in Linux Weekly News. I asked newsletters that are more Python specific to spread the word. I said things on Twitter, on a chat channel. I set up an open chat hour. I tried to reach out to language specific, the Spanish speaking users to try and get the word out that way. I wrote to mailing lists, and I had conference calls with data journalists, teachers, research scientists, those kinds of groups who use Python, would be affected by this, but do not conceptualize themselves as Python users and seek information directly that way. I reached out to Python-specific podcasts, but Talk Python, Python Bytes, podcast.init, but also Floss Weekly, and other podcasts that were more generally about free and open source software. I could have used TikTok, maybe. An actual ad budget even would have been useful, because it is great to be where your audience is instead of blaming them for not being where you are. I mean, it was 2020. Maybe I should have done like a sea shanty. Because for those of you who were not hanging out on English language social media, in 2020, there was a song called The Wellerman that went around on English language social media. There once was a bad dependency that caused and install uncertainty. So don't be surprised and heed my plea to click the link below. Soon may dependencies break, resolving the conflicts that you make. This year, for stability's sake, you'll take this pip and go. That probably would have ballooned the executable. It's a good thing we didn't do it. A thing that does work is error messages and terminal output. Even on the command line, right, you have a user experience that includes error messages. And sometimes error messages are the only kind of public service announcement that you can be guaranteed at least some users will read. So if you have a user, that means you have a user interface, and you can improve it. And one of the things I'm most proud of in our work on the pip resolver in 2020 is I helped make sure there was budget for user experience research people who could actually do surveys, user tests, interviews, talk with users, and help figure out what is their mental model in a difficult moment of trying to resolve a dependency conflict. What could we do to test, A/B test, different error messages in terms of color, length, formatting, hyperlinks? Here is a before and after, for instance, from a big block of red to something that's formatted so you can actually understand what needs fixing. Here's another big block of text that's the same color, less text, more pointed. Here's a big red stack trace. Here's a stack trace that uses color judiciously to show exactly what you might need to do. Superbloom, which is the consultancy that we worked with, created user experience research case studies and guidance for us, and wrote a more general guide to how your small open source project can do user testing. I linked to that in the blog post. I have been very encouraging, right? Very PyCon, very you can do this. But sometimes the you can do anything empowerment makes you feel like you have to do everything. Maybe just me? PyCon will have all these workshops on how to get into open source, but not on how to get out. There's some people here who aren't even laughing. They're just like, yeah. Responsibility in open source is so sticky, we should make like epoxy out of it, because you can spend 6 days making something and then 6 years trying to find someone to hand it off to. I took a trip while I was working on packaging to co-work with a colleague for a day, the kind of person who takes on a lot of stuff. And I said, hey, hold on, what all do you have responsibility for? And we made a list on paper, and it just kept going. And by the end of just making the list, he was like, oh, maybe I should put a couple things down. So he archived a repository or two or stepped away from some moderation responsibilities on a mailing list. People who want to make a difference often end up acting like just because you made a dent in the universe means you have to live there. But that is not the case. And that is why I created Volunteer Responsibility Amnesty Day. The responsibilities that we have to our users are significant, and then there's the responsibilities we all have to each other and to ourselves, which include, let's say twice a year, at the solstices, making a list of the stuff that you said you'd do, and then checking whether you still want to do it. Ambitious accretion needs to be matched with thoughtful ending. There's no other way this whole thing, sorry, is going to be sustainable. So this is your second piece of homework. The next of these is June 20th. Put a meeting with yourself on your calendar for 20 minutes just to think about your choices. If the free bit of free software means anything, it means that you have the freedom to leave. You are not obligated to carry a load on your shoulders just because you are currently, maybe temporarily capable of doing so. There's got to also be some reciprocity to this whole thing. Those of us who were fans of a TV show called The Good Place recently might have a particular way that they're nodding to each other about story number 4, what do we owe to each other? Let's think about obligation and reciprocity. Let's think about the fact that users are unhappy with institutions that are faceless, they're unaccountable, where it doesn't feel like the feedback goes anywhere or is listened to. And it is absolutely reasonable for maintainers to begin to feel some imbalance when they're given a lot and not getting anything back. Do we as maintainers of open source infrastructure owe the same obligation to users who give back and to users who have the capability to reciprocate but choose not to? We have responsibilities partly because other people don't step up, and by people, I mean corporations. This is a blank slide, partly so I don't name names, of some companies that had real entitled things to say when we were doing various switchovers that badly needed doing and that we were on really limited grant-funded timelines for. Like one that we were doing a migration and we had put deprecation notices in the error messages, but they weren't seeing them because they weren't looking at the virtual machines and their continuous integration, and they were mad at us about that. Or, oh, hey, well, let me give you the analogy I told my mom at the time. Imagine some volunteers build a well, and it pumps some water, and it's enough for some people. But it's not necessarily enough for the companies that are plugging in the pipelines for bottling plants so that they're going to sell bottled water, for out of something they got for free. And they aren't really paying attention when the volunteers are like, okay, this well isn't good enough. We're not getting any money from you for that, but we'll go dig a better well using some nonprofit, grant money, a little bit that we got. And they start plastering, hey, we're going to be turning this well off on such and such a day notices. But if you never actually physically go there, if you're using it but you never go there, you're not going to notice until the water starts stuttering a little bit as they're load testing, switching to the new well. And so maybe you show up and say, what? You're switching to a new well, but my profit-making factory depends on the old well currently. I certainly didn't see any of the billboards, or rather, wheat-pasted notices that you put up. Surely you'll delay for, months. They weren't paying attention until something happened that broke their ability to make use of the stuff we'd been giving them for free so they could make money. Well, in the United States, we actually have a history of songs that we sing about labor, and especially about those who make a profit by exploiting workers. Here is one that comes to mind for me. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel could turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn. Collective action makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Collective action makes us strong. Thank you, Jeff Epler, for accompanying me on bass. And thank you for accompanying me on guitar to my spouse, Leonard Richardson, who is also the creator and maintainer of the screen scraping library Beautiful Soup, by the way. Speaking of invisible infrastructure, I don't work on packaging anymore. I helped get the ball rolling. But I specialize in short-term project management. The best thing for packaging right now is a long-term view. More companies sponsoring the Python Software Foundation, sponsoring PyPI, so we can pay more employees to work on the long term and flexibly do what needs doing for everybody. But the lessons of working on infrastructure I took elsewhere. Several years ago, I took a CPR class, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and I learned how amazing automated external defibrillators, or AEDs, are. If somebody has cardiac arrest, right, if they have a heart attack, CPR can do some good, but defibrillators that deliver an electrical charge can so often restart that heart. And the faster we get there with a defibrillator, the greater the chances of survival and a good health outcome. And now, as of the last actually couple of decades, there are automated external defibrillators that can actually sense, oh, does this person need a shock? If you put them on a healthy person's chest, no shock delivered. But if there's an absence of heart rhythm or an arrhythmia that could be corrected by a shock, then it'll deliver that shock. How amazing that we have brought technology to restarting something that has gotten stuck, that has stopped. And that's why they're safe enough to have on the wall at this conference center, right? And airports and gyms and train stations, because completely untrained people can save lives. Think of these not like fire hydrants, where you gotta wait for the professionals to show up, because they're the ones to use them. No, these are more like fire extinguishers. Anybody, if you see a problem that these could possibly address, feel free, grab it. You are not gonna hurt. you may well help save a life, or at least keep the problem from getting worse while we're waiting for the professionals to get there. One of these pieces of infrastructure that is a lot of places, but sometimes can feel invisible because maybe our eyes just pass over them. We assume it's for someone else. No, that's for you. So I found out about these and I thought, gosh, that's really cool that there's so many of these, and there's a lot of public access ones as well in government buildings and fast food restaurants, all sorts of stuff. So I thought, well, where's my nearest one? I want to know where's my nearest AED, the places I spend the most time, because that way, in case I see something happen, while one person does CPR, calls 911, someone else can go run a couple minutes and grab that AED and use it. And in a very walkable city like New York City, where I live, sometimes that might beat the ambulance by minutes, and those minutes could save a life. But I couldn't find out where my nearest one was. This was the best, most recent map I could find. It was very, very coarse-grained. It did not have any addresses or latitudes and longitudes, and it was from 2010. And this bothered me. So I guess I decided to scratch my own itch, because I suggested a bill to the New York City Council, and it wasn't workable, and so I suggested another bill, and then that draft wasn't actually going to achieve what we wanted, so I worked with them to revise it. Basically, I made a pull request. And I shepherded it along, and I worked with the maintainers, and the way I talked about it, other people said, oh gosh, you're pretty passionate about this, aren't you? And to me, it didn't feel like passion. It's just like, well, this just isn't right. And something's got to happen about it, right? So we revised the bill, and the city council passed it. It's the HART Act, the Hari Hareshwara Expand Access to Rapid Treatment Act. It's named after me, and it's named after my father, who died of a heart attack. They were supposed to release this data on January 1st, 2024, and they have not done so yet. It's a big, complicated system, and it's not working right. And I've learned before that even someone like me who didn't know that domain going in can make a difference. I'm not a public health expert, I'm not a data analysis expert, I'm not an emergency medicine expert, but I wasn't a Python packaging expert either, right? And I learned when I worked on infrastructure, there are big, complicated systems that emerged over time, and sometimes there's a part of them that doesn't work just right. And I can see how I can make a difference by looking around, thinking about what our goals are, understanding what activities we're doing towards those goals, who's in charge of what resources are available, and finding the right question to ask and not going away until we get a good answer. Because I am curious and I'm stubborn because I'm a project manager. There are infrastructures in your world, whether invisible digital infrastructure or something as obvious as a big box on a wall, that you could engage with. You could engage with something that seems so big, and you could be a defibrillator. You could be those paddles that revive something that's not working so great. Whether in open source or local government or something else, you can awaken your curiosity and your stubbornness, find the right place to engage with something that seems big, something infrastructural, something other people don't even realize they depend on, and you could make a difference that maybe no one else even realizes needs to be made. So I have 3 pieces of homework for you. 1, renew a connection with someone you miss. Life is short. 2, a month from now, June 20th, clean your slate, look through your volunteer responsibilities, archive or reduce or step away from the things that just aren't working for you anymore. Let's make continuing to do these things as intentional as starting them was, or more so. And so that 3, you can have some more room to consider solidarity. We are all in this together. Infrastructure is how we care for each other at scale. And I have been so privileged to be able to take care of so many of you, and I hope you can join me. I want to thank the captioner, the interpreters, all the people who gave feedback on the talk, Leonard and Jeff for accompanying me. Thank you, and thank you, PyCon.